At this point in history, MrBeast practically needs no introduction. Regardless if you watch his content or not, you are pretty much aware of his existence and what he has accomplished throughout the years, becoming the fastest growing YouTuber on the platform, and also being a philanthropist helping other people by donating money. But how long have you been following him, though? Maybe a month? A year? Maybe more than that I don't know. But you surely haven't been there since the beginning. Since he only had single-digit subscribers? I used to be his idea man, always coming up with the newest thing to hit the web with to try and gain traction on this godforsaken platform. I worked for Beast closely, for a while, in the early days, back before he became such a beloved sensation. There were some duds and some popular ones, but there was one thing he wanted to attempt for the very first official giveaway, something that would become a staple of his channel. And his very first giveaway was a video that has since been deleted and purged from the internet entirely. Or so he thought. You see, on the internet, someone is either watching, archiving, downloading, and screenshotting media online. It is near to impossible to get away with anything without some unlucky soul seeing your creation. The idea came to him in a dream years ago, he claimed anyway, to achieve the most intriguing content giveaway on all of the internet. Kind of like a TV show, except you can block all the ads. I thought it sounded like a fantastic plan at first. You see, MrBeast wanted to recreate a sort of most dangerous game type of giveaway. Send people into the forest, jungle, or whatever location, and whoever is the last to be found by the so-called hunters wins. Think of it as, an advanced version of hide and seek that can last days at a time or more. Unfortunately, since no one in our team had any experience, the proper precautions were not taken. We just went with it, on the orders of MrBeast, of course. It was a bright October morning in a location I will not disclose. Just know that it was pretty hot out, even in the month of Halloween. Beast thought it would give a pretty good vibe for making it close to the holiday of fright. We arrived to scout the area and decide on the 5 contestants to contact out of the list of those who voluntarily signed up. The funny part about this is that the video that was put up asking for volunteers is still up on the channel, although nothing of what the giveaway challenge entailed was to be disclosed to keep people from pre-training. The prize, however, was disclosed as $50,000. Now that may seem like a chump change in comparison to the monetary amounts he gives away nowadays, but keep in mind that this was way before he was well known by every common man and woman on the internet and even the world. We had our 5 contestants selected, and I will not use their names, their actual names. However, I'll refer to him as Joanna, Ben, Steve, Rachel, and Jessica. MrBeast had them give a little background on themselves when they entered to potentially participate, so we can better select the proper contestants from the crowd. Joanna was a veterinarian who wanted to open her own animal sanctuary at age 23. Ben was a college soccer star studying biology at age 21. Steve was the youngest of the group, age 18, who had just graduated high school that summer. Rachel was a college dropout who started her own beauty salon at age 24. And lastly, we have Jessica, who was the oldest of the group at age 26, whose card read that she enjoyed hiking, camping, and scuba diving. They all seemed interesting enough for an episode of a TV show, I suppose. Everything was set into motion. The winners were contacted and told what the challenge was going to be. Anyone who wanted to could opt out now. Ben was the only one who had to drop out of the contest. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to get out of his previous obligations for the days being allotted. He was replaced with Spencer, the new youngest of the group, at age 15, who enjoyed hunting, fishing, and all kinds of other outdoor activities. We had assumed that the contest would be over in a few hours. It was starting at sunrise, and there were 10 hunters to be rotated in and out on 5-man shifts. Even if night fell, MrBeast figured that 1.5 days was the absolute maximum we needed to track them all down. They were all given a backpack with a wide selection of survival gear to select from, including food and emergency walkie-talkie. Those were the 2 things MrBeast required them all to take. Everything else was optional. The cameras were set through the forest, which was near exactly 20 miles north to south and east to west. We also had a cameraman trailing around each hunter, or if they remained, grouped to gather more footage for the video. The rules were pretty simple. If the hunters see you, they'll call out your exact location to prove that they're not cheating, and just seeing that they see somebody. I just figured that Steve or Joanna had the best shot to win just by looking at them. But how it all managed to turn to hell right off the bat, I don't know, man. We gave them all a 30-minute head start before the hunters were unleashed into the wild. I wasn't part of the first group of hunters, but from the gathered footage, it was all captured. I saw every second. Rachel was the first to be found. She apparently tried to pull the closer we are to danger, the further we are from harm trick, and climbed up in a massive cedar tree close to the starting point. While climbing back down, she lost her footing and plummeted 15 feet to the ground. Luckily, Rachel wasn't majorly injured, but she did land quite awkwardly on her wrist, severely spraining them in the process. This was only a preview of the horrors to come. Rachel had lasted 3 hours in the forest as the hunters scanned the perimeter, deciding to make their way inward. They split up to cover more ground. None of the others were found during the first shift. Me and the other 4 hunters had the privilege of the night lurk. We had those industrial-level flashlights that seemed to light up the forest scenery for miles upon miles. We were supposed to have found at least another one of them, but it was a deadlock. That forest was freezing at night, even with a winter coat on. Trudging through the mud and briar at 3 a.m. is an experience you wouldn't soon forget. MrBeast was checking the footage on the thermal cameras that we installed throughout the woods earlier that morning. However, he informed us that all of them had stopped working. Every last one. The feed had entirely blacked out. I figured that the chances of them capturing anything good enough to put in the video were slim to none, so I took it with a grain of salt. Our hunter's shift was almost over as daybreak was about to hit. We headed in to send out the others. No luck. Not a single other contestant was found. Fortunately, Jessica was discovered around 7 a.m. the next day. She was found in a cave that was dead center of the forest. She said that she had been seeing hunters checking it, previously thinking why would they look for it again so soon? They told her stories of it being a grizzly bear cave, and that she was extremely lucky that it hadn't been there. The hunters also claimed that they came across a mother bear and her cub earlier in the shift, but this was all a sham for the camera. There was nothing larger than a squirrel in those woods, supposedly. Anyway, the day hunters had been the only group to find anyone at this point, so we wanted to make our next shift count. They mentioned that they had seen what looked like a makeshift treehouse 10.5 miles to the west, and that perhaps one of them was staying there at night. This was the coldest and deepest part of the forest. The mud you walked on night in this section of the woods was like a lake in the tundra. We honestly thought about turning them back and hoping the day crew would just catch them, leaving the spot instead. We hadn't found anyone yet, so we trudged on. Turns out there were 3 makeshift tree houses within about a 2-mile perimeter of each other. We didn't know if they were there beforehand, or they were crafted by someone. And leave it to this hellish night that it was the 3rd and final one we climbed into, one that held a contestant. Oh my god. Will that image never get out of my head? Oh my god. We shined the bright flashlights with the cameras rolling and yelling out, "We found you!" However, the body lay there, still and motionless, crumpled up under a sleeping bag. They were sleeping, we all thought. You would be too if you spent the last 2 days hiding like a prison escapee. This was tragically not the case. The horrifying revelation that came to us was that Spencer had frozen to death, laying up in the makeshift treehouse. We didn't know it at the time, as we recorded his dead body huddled up and still frozen in a last moment of fear. We only assumed that he was asleep from exhaustion. Oh, how I wish this was the case. After the tragic news broke, MrBeast figured he would just edit that part out whilst producing the final product, but the human brain remembers everything. After this, he kind of ushered the losers along as to not draw attention to what was occurring. Joanna and Steve were the final 2 left. Okay, calm down. Turns out they had made a secret pathway to work together. There were no rules against this. In fact, there were no actual rules at all. MrBeast had wanted it this way. A contest with a thesis for rules or for losers, he'd say. The participants were notified by the emergency walkie-talkies when another was found, so they knew that they were the final 2 standing. They created a small fire to cook up the rest of their food and celebrate. Our shift as the night hunters was about to end, but we smelled the scent of a smoke just as the sun began to peek over the bright orange horizon. What a beautiful sight after nights of such travesty. They offered us some of the breakfast as we radioed into MrBeast to notify him that the contest was indeed over. Joanna and Steve had won. MrBeast, as we all know, is a very generous man, even back in the early days of which we speak. Why split the $50,000 between the winners? He decided on the spot as soon as they returned to the base camp to reward them with $50,000 each in cash. That body of Spencer was still out there, though no authorities had yet been notified. He was too young. His parents would start asking questions very soon. MrBeast wasn't here to play the victim card, though. Everything was settled out of court, as he was not directly responsible. You probably never even heard of this story or even a rumor of it. MrBeast and a couple of night hunters, including me, were the only ones aware of what happened in the forest on that fateful October night. This was the first time that anyone is ever coming out about it, to my knowledge anyway. MrBeast doesn't want to ruin his perfect image. All the names in this story were changed for similar purposes. He didn't want to let all of his work go to waste, though. The video of the contest was still to go up. He rushed through the editing and then sent me a copy of the final video. However, he made the mistake of publishing it before I was even able to watch the copy in its entirety. I stared in disbelief as he had left the entire 35 minutes of raw footage, which even included the disturbing footage of Spencer's dead, frozen body, even shining the light and zooming in on his lifeless face. I texted Beast immediately upon viewing this with the simple takedown of the video. Now, he did delete it a mere 15 minutes after it went up. Who knows if anyone archived or downloaded or did anything with it. He informed me to delete it off my PC as soon as possible, as he was going to delete it off of his and do a full factory reset, as well as getting rid of the computer as a whole. I was just about to pull the plug on the file when I decided to leave it on the hard drive, but remove it from my computer and buy a new one. I still have it to this very day, many years later. Unfortunately, the PC is gone, and the hard drive is not compatible with my Chromebook that I use now. This story was not written to ruin MrBeast's reputation, and if you think this is all just a story that I made up on a whim, then that's fine. That's up to you. I'm not changing your opinion. Even though I haven't seen MrBeast in person for a while, I am still proud of how much he has positively changed the world for the better. From planting 20 million trees, to being a good friend, to donating money. MrBeast is a good person, and I am grateful to be once a friend of his. As for my copy of the Lost giveaway, it is probably the only copy of the dreaded video that still exists. But then, who knows? If only I could just access it and watch it one last